Welcome, everybody, to the free webinar Ascension and High Vibrational Living Most Frequently Asked Questions and Answers. Um, my name is Yona Brindis, and next to me is Jeff Casper.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I hope you can hear me now. It's an honor for us that so many of you are spending your time or choose to spend your time here with us on this beautiful Saturday afternoon, at least here in Colorado, United States. And we are extremely excited. We have such a strong resonance here. We had so many questions that were submitted that we were asking, that we actually needed to ask for backup. So we have some trans coaches, energy coaches here from transCODES in our panel today. Marianne, Rick, and Ronine, your guys' microphones are already on. Can you say hi to the audience real quick?
Hi there.
Hello, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming. If you're new to this kind of webinar software, just know that you can text questions at any time, and we will read them and answer them for you. But you can also raise your hand, and that indicates to us that you would like to speak live. This is a live webinar, and this is sort of the cool part about this webinar, that we can directly respond to your questions. We had some, I don't know, I think 50 questions up front, and I had to sort them into clusters. So we're going to try to address as many questions as we can, but we also want to give you a little bit of background info first, so that we all sort of on the same page, if that's possible. All right. This is a free Healing Circle webinar, as we call it, out of a series of free webinars that we do. We frequently, like bi-weekly almost, do webinars with our clients, with the people that work with us in the Sacred Self-Healing or Heart Warrior program. And this is an opportunity to just to get familiar with how we operate and how we share energetic information. Again, my name is Yona Brindis. I'm the founder and owner of transCODES, and I'm, of course, an energy coach here, an author, and train other coaches. Next to me is
Jeff Casper, and I'm the founder and owner of Self Vacation. Also an energy coach, writer, trainer, all those kind of things. Same thing.
And we don't have pictures of our panel guests here, Rick Saperco, Marianne Lazoya, and Ronine Harrison. Those are all trained trans coaches here at transCODES. They can be looked up on the main transCODES website. All right, what is the objective of this webinar meeting? Well, first and foremost, for you to share or ask personal questions. I really want to emphasize this. This is why we do this, all right? We do lectures and webinars all the time. So it's not really about getting information across. There's a huge archive of articles in the transCODES blog and so forth. There's a lot of ways to get that information for free here at transCODES. But we want to offer this webinar opportunity to ask personal questions. Of course, we do increase or want to help you to increase awareness with educational materials. So there's going to be a little bit of educational materials in here, and encourage you to become an active participant in your spiritual journey if you not already are, which I assume you guys all are already. A recording will be available to all of you, so if you miss out on parts or the audio goes bad or whatever, don't worry, you're going to get a video recording, including all the slides. Timeline, well, I can already feel this in me. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of slides. I'm going to start talking real fast, and if you hear me say, it's usually because I read questions while I'm talking, so forgive me for this sort of multitasking issue here. But after this intro, I want to address the first cluster of questions, which is very much sort of what most people want to know. So that, like the the most frequently asked questions. And then we would like to give you just an overview of Ascension from the energetic point of view. This may be surprising to some of you. We offer a deep spiritual view, and yet we're not leaning this onto any particular teaching or school. Our expertise here at transCODES is to be able to actually observe people's energies and their dynamics. And so we will report a little bit on what this looks like from our side, and also the conclusions out of that, aside from any metaphysical spiritual theories. And then a big part will be, of course, integrating the principles of high vibrational living, which I've gathered together like in sort of 12 things that we can do. And of course, the live questions and answers. All right. The submitted question clusters that we had, the most frequently asked questions were, of course, attracting abundance. That's probably one of the most important questions that people have. Making better choices, dealing with the physical aspects of ascension or high vibrational living. Big, big subject nowadays, as so many of us are starting to feel it. Dealing with mental overlay, things in regards to how to meditate, how to conquer the mind, the monkey mind that keeps interfering. Dealing with emotional ups and downs, big issue, especially this year has been a real big test, a real big challenge for most of us energetically sensitive people. How to let go of vibratory, of low vibratory things and patterns. That's probably the most important question. And we'll get to that in detail. How to deal with family issues, also big issue for many people or friends. Of course, how to deal with relationship issues. How to deal with collective energies, something that keeps coming up, which is why I've started writing energy reports like a year or two ago, just to sort of reconfirm some of the sensations that most people have. We work with hundreds of people every week, and not that this is statistically significant for the entire population of this planet, but I think it is significant for the part of the population that is energetically sensitive. The people that we work with are from all over the world, and they've been around for a long time. So this allows us to get a preview of collective energies and work with them in transmissions and coachings and so forth. How to deal with spiritual crisis, also something, of course, everybody formulated this a little bit differently, but, things that go into our deepest beliefs, how we actually see this entire ascension process. And we won't be able to give the answers here that will satisfy everybody. We're going to try to stay as neutral as possible. Mm-hmm. And another question, especially in coachings, we get these questions, is how to deal with work changes. And what I mean with this is like after we start or as we start to integrate these principles of higher vibrational living, we really want to make practical changes. I should have called this how to deal with practical changes. And we sort of run into dilemmas here, into contradictions. Like we have to go out and do our TikTok job to pay our bills, but at the same time, we can feel that it's really not good for our energy, or that the company we work for is not very integrous and so forth. Those are a lot of these questions are ethical in nature, but we can answer some of these questions in regards to what we can do personally and how we can make a transition if we want to change something. I'm not going to really educate you on the evolution of consciousness. I'm assuming that all of you guys are here because you're already aware of this. There's a massive shift happening, whether we can prove it or not. There's, of course, the attempt, or not just the attempt, but also a lot of activity in trying to prove that the electromagnetic field of the planet is increasing, and so there's a lot of things that can be measured today. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking about things that are really difficult to prove, and there's only a few of us who really have that kind of perception to see those energetic dynamics yet. And this is a part of transCODES mission statement. We want to help you increase your perception to become able to see those things for yourselves. We don't want to convince you of anything. We just providing the tools, the platform, and the community to exchange and to learn how to navigate through this entire global awakening or transitioning process that the entire world is going through. All right, I gotta slow down here for a second. Are there any questions so far? I hope you're not experiencing technical difficulties here, but you can raise your hand at any time. You can ask questions or comment at any time. Just keep your sentences real short, because remember, we're talking while we're reading. So when the sentence structure gets too complicated, it's hard for us to respond. Okay. We do have some questions that we picked as individual questions that were submitted up front. And I think, Jeff, what do you think? We should just get started with some of the questions.
Sure.
To give our listeners here an overview over what we sort of want to address and how we deal with them. And then we go to the principles of high vibrational living, the views, and also how we can integrate those. All right, here comes the first question, and this is actually one of the last questions that was submitted, and I want to say something about this question. This is probably the most important, well, I don't want to say most important, but it is the question that concerns us all. How can I get myself to a high vibration so I can attract money, happiness, love, and abundance into my life? We cannot give you an answer to this question here at this point, but we can tell you that all the things that we'll be talking about here will lead to that.
Yes.
We can't really get ourselves to a high vibration. Living on a high vibrational level is the consequence of our choices, the consequence of a multitude of corrections, healing processes, and also sort of mental and emotional clearing processes. So I picked this question as first question because this is where it all leads to. This is where we all end up then beginning to understand how to stay or how to hold higher vibratory resonances so that we can attract money, happiness, love, and abundance into our life. I hope this answers the question, yeah. How can I best discern what is good for me higher vibrationally and what is not? Probably on a practical level, also the most important or the best representation of what we need to learn. This is what we need to learn. And we're going to talk about this here in detail. So hang on there a little bit, stay tuned. We're going to get to your question and answer this in the course of going through the slides. How to stay better in my own energy without being involved in other people's traumas or dramas, if I may add that too. This is a big subject.
Yes.
We deal with this a lot at transCODES, teaching people energetic dynamics, making them understand how energetic projection and energetic absorption works. I guess it's essential to understand these things, like how our energies interact, so that we don't get pulled in. But there are some practical tips that we have for you here in the course of this presentation. And as a short answer, I can already give you the answer that the more we stay within ourselves, the less we absorb from the outside or get pulled in into other people's stuff. So there is a sort of an equation, an energetic equation between what we project and what we absorb on the tail end of it. And so the less we project, less we sort of push energies out, the less we attract, or the less we get pulled in by other people's projections. Did you want to add something to that?
No, it's really the difference. It's the difference between sympathy and empathy. There's a big one there, and really what you have to kind of look at is just learning not only what Yona said, but kind of making those choices that we're talking about. We'll go through in the webinar. Is that when you find yourself going into those states, learning how to pull out. When you find yourself going too far in other people's dramas or traumas, learning what keeps you going there, and that's the whole practice. And then making the proper choices.
Here's a question that we won't really be able to address in detail here in this presentation, but there is a recording from our last free webinar, which was called Energetic Aspects of Relationships and Twin Soul Aspects. How do you recommend tuning into yourself? How can I tell if all the ascension, physical, emotional, and energetic shifts are really my own or that of my twin flame, or dealing with being sensitive to collective energies? We will address, though, the aspect of, and this was already in the previous question, of how to not get swept away by waves that come from the outside. The twin soul or twin flame aspect we can't really address here. This would go too far, but the dynamics are the same. And no matter what kind of relationship we have, even in a so-called twin flame relationship, we all are responsible for our own energy management, for our own energy. And there is no justification for getting pulled in or for tuning too much to other people or our partner. That is something that we need to learn to discipline within ourselves. The more we project, and this also includes the more we sort of tune into somebody else's energy, the more we absorb. So if you want to stay away, or if you want to make sure that what you're experiencing is what is yours and not what is coming from the outside, learn how to consolidate your energy while being open at the same time. There's techniques out there that you can use, but even without knowing any fancy energy work techniques, it's basically the centering in your heart and staying with yourself. Another question that we will address a little bit here, and that I would have to refer to some of the articles that I wrote for more details. How do you recommend tuning into yourself and what is best to you nutritionally, rather than being swept away in feelings of guilt of not being able to lead the vegetarian, vegan lifestyle recommended by so many? I want to single out this question and answer that in a little bit here. Rick, if you want to help me out with this question, when we get there, probably in like 10 to 15 minutes, that'd be cool. Graduation is fast approaching. Will the ascended individuals transition to another form while those who did not fully ascend remain in 3D until they become due in the succeeding two more ascension waves? This question is a good example for a lot of sort of esoteric terminology, and I kind of understand where this question is coming from, except for I disagree with some of the words like graduation. All this implies that there is a sort of a I'd say like a specialness or being chosen, or climbing up a ladder. Only a few will be accepted or so. This is something that goes more into the viewpoint of how do we see the ascension process, and our answers may not be satisfactory for you, but there are some things that I agree with, and that is in this question there's an underlying question, and that is what happens with those who do not adjust or that have harder time to adjust and so forth. Here, I would like to throw in the keyword bifurcation. It's the standing term. It's a bit more scientific than, a bit more neutral than graduation. It is likely or probable. There's a probability that this energetic shift will happen on two different two or more different dimensional levels, and that there's people who evolve in their consciousness and see things differently, perceive things differently, and that there's people that won't be able to see those things. It's actually something that we are experiencing already, actually. And there's a last question that I want to point out that we're also going to address within the course of the entire presentation. How can you increase your vibration when you've had 15 plus years of bad things happening to you? Job losses, car accidents, illnesses, and no money to live a normal life. After years of praying, meditation, workshops, energy healings, etc., things just don't change. How can you change that? This is a question very close to my heart because we understand that these principles of high vibrational living, this sounds so conceptual, but these are not just theoretical issues. These are very, very practical issues. And for everyone listening here who's not familiar with transcodes, and which is totally fine, when you look at any of these recommendations or teachings or whatever, make sure that you understand that there is a real big or real important practical aspect to this. It will not help you to drift off in the mental realm and examine or study all the metaphysical theories and teachings that are out there if you're not willing or able to apply this into your life. This is not the answer to the question. The answer to the question is yes, this is really tough. And the hardest part about this is that when we have a lifetime of suffering, if you will, then this shows you a pattern. It shows you that your energy somehow is not able to break free from the slow vibratory attractor field. And this is what we're going to address here in the presentation. How to do this step by step. Ascension, or the results of high vibrational living, are not an event. They're not something that just so happens to us overnight because we're chosen or because we are part of a certain special group of people. It happens to us because we align to it and we adjust our life, we make corrections, and we're willing to see the things that keep pulling us back, even if those are things within us, like our ego, for example, or a shadow. This is a very, very deep process to become able to maintain higher vibratory states. And we'll get into this here. So thanks for hanging in there. I notice there's a lot of talking up front here. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a preview of the type of questions that we will answer with our presentation. And then hopefully have enough time to go through all your live questions here. Okay, one of the things that stick out for me looking around and having been around for a long time is all the misconceptions and all the misleading information that is out there. It's great that we have all these sources of information available to us, but it also makes it really difficult to discern. What is the current statistics on information relayed on the internet, the truth level of information out on the internet?
The last one I heard was over 60 or 70% is false.
60 to 70% of information on the internet could be seen as false. only 40% true. This is less.
That's probably low. It's probably much higher than that, but that's what they could pull and see.
Let's just be conservative and stay with this. Less than half of the information out there on the internet is true. This means we need to have a functioning way of discerning information. We can't just take everything for granted. This, of course, also applies to this webinar here, to everything we say.
Yeah.
But I wanted to pick out two words that I used a lot, or one of them, Ascension, which I also used in the headline here for this webinar. Ascension is a tricky word. It is an old word that comes out, I think, from the Sanskrit ancient text translation, which means, sort of the gradual increase of energy, or the gradual sort of climbing up a ladder, so to speak, into a higher dimension, as some people call it. They work with 4D, 3D, 4D, 5D, 7D, the D standing for dimension. Or is it a descension, really? Is something coming down to us? The bottom line is, one of the biggest misconceptions that we see in people, and we can see this energetically in their energy field, is the orientation, the upward orientation. There's an upward orientation in their energy fields, mostly visible through a too wide open crown chakra, where we're looking for something, we're searching something outside of us, typically above us. This creates, I'll say it straight out, a wonderful gate for negative energies, for astral stuff, for all kinds of psychic attack. That is what most people who cannot get out of their energetic states are actually dealing with. My personal recommendation is to really reframe your journey, to not see it as an ascension, as something going up, and especially not to externalize your higher power to anything outside of you. Not a teacher, not an author, not a parent, not a book, a being, not even an archangel or a spirit guide. You can if this is part of your spiritual practice, that's fine, but you have to learn how to discern information. And if you externalize your higher power, you are pulling in forces or energies that feed off that. My recommendation is to look at it as a descension process, as something that is coming into you, because your inner higher power is not outside of you. It's right here. It's in the middle. It's right in your heart. And so, from our mind's point of view, in our head, it's actually an energetic descension process. It's pulling the energies down into our heart and learning how to hold our heart field. That is what enables us to increase our frequency, or to increase our vibratory rate. Are there any questions? Here, a quote from a manifestation article I wrote a couple of years ago. The hardest part about becoming one with the divine field is not to understand it, but to realize that we're already part of it. Okay, here I'm throwing in a new word, divine field. There really isn't a better word to describe the universal force that is driving creation. Divine field is, for me, the most neutral way of expressing that. But there is a field that permeates us, all of us, that infuses us with the highest vibratory resonances out there. And by saying the hardest part about becoming one with the divine field is not that we need to understand all the terms and stuff, but that we're already part of it. So to a degree, whether or not we have higher vibrate, or we are able to align ourselves in our lives to higher vibratory or vibrational thoughts, actions, sentiments, depends on whether we choose to become one with the divine field. And there are some energetic dynamics that I would like to throw in here just for basic understanding. This is something that derived from Dr. Hawkins's map of consciousness. And I don't want to go into details here, but I want to just throw in a new way of looking at your ascension process or vibrational energetic states that may make it a little easier. There really is only two states of our energy, and that is, if you focus here on this side of this cone, our energy is either contracted or it's expanded. And there's a threshold here which pretty much differentiates all energies within and around us as either life-sustaining, life-supporting, life-promoting, and sort of intrinsically growing in vibrational rate as we can hold them, and energies that are life-draining and intrinsically downward spiraling because they contract. And so the energetic view of our ascension process is really simple. We either align ourselves to energies that are high in vibration, which means that they're expansive. And if we do that, then the whole process sort of begins to become self-propelled. As we align to the divine field, which is naturally expansive, through our heart, our journey already is on an upward spiral. If we align ourselves to lower vibratory states, anger, pride, desire, fear, guilt and shame, pain, our energy contracts and will further be pulled down due to energetic dynamics, which we call attractor fields. So to break through this, we really, really need to become aware of what we are aligned to, where the majority of our attention and intention is located, where this goes. And this graph here, we use this in webinars after energy sessions to report what we observed, where we observed resistances, and you can tell they're all here in this lower vibratory state, and these lower vibratory states, and then we talk about the incoming healing frequencies that are needed to neutralize those lower vibratory states in us, be it emotions, thoughts, and so forth, to move into expansive, what we call high vibrational states. So these states here are basically what we identify as high vibrational states. All right. And here I want to throw in, probably, if this is all you remember from this webinar, then this can be a life changer for you. The number one mistake most people, including myself, including everybody I know,
Me too,
is trying to find low vibratory solutions for high vibratory problems. What does that mean? Let's go back here. We all want to be enlightened. We all want to be in the states of love, joy, peace, and so forth. Those are high vibrational or high vibratory problems. Problems because we can't be there. And we're looking for answers when we are in these low states. And when we're in these low states, guess what? We don't have any access to any kind of solutions that are what we would call high vibratory solutions. We only have access to the solutions according to the energetic state that we're in at the time and lower. So if I'm in a state of anger, have you guys ever tried to feel love when you're in a state of anger? It's impossible. You cannot access that energetic resonance in you when you're in the state of anger. And the same, of course, applies to addictions, to any kind of desire, ego stuff, fear, pain, and so forth. And the reason why this is mistake number one is because we constantly find ourselves in these lower energetic states of fear and anger and guilt and shame, and yet we want to be here so bad, and then we beat ourselves up over not being there, which, of course, as you may have already guessed, just sort of further energizes the downward spiral. So the number one way, or the way to overcome this number one problem of trying to find solutions for higher vibratory issues when we're in lower vibratory states is to stop right there and acknowledge where you're at and accept that your journey into these higher vibrational states is a step-by-step journey. That it's not something that happens to you because you're so good or you know so much about Ascension. There's many of us who have experienced those states here and there, maybe as a child, maybe through vision quests, meditation, or other kind of transcendental experiences.
Or just fumbling around until it happens. Because that does happen sometimes. Sometimes you keep trying and it just pops up.
This doesn't mean that you're enlightened. It just means that you discovered that you have these higher vibratory states within you already. But to be able to hold them and to live according to them, this is what we are talking about here. And this is a journey, oftentimes a lifelong journey, if not a journey over many different lifetimes. So just because there's so much information out there nowadays on ascension and enlightenment and so forth, doesn't mean that we're closer. Sure, esotericism, and I wrote about this in a recent article, esotericism or esoterics mean that this is information only accessible for certain people. And I guess a couple thousand years ago, that was important to keep it secret to a degree because most people's consciousness level was really too low. Misuse would be too probable. But just because all this information is out there now, and we're not really in times of esoterics anymore, we're living in a time of exoterics now, where everything is accessible for everybody. Just because all this information is available to us doesn't mean that misuse can't happen, or that we are all ready to integrate those things that we read about. Okay, not to sound negative here, but this is important to understand, because most people, quite frankly, who find themselves in these lower states here over and over again, a big part of that is inner sabotage and beat up cycles, that they're not here where they want to be so desperately. But this is a new problem for our human consciousness development. See, in the older days, people were happy if they just made it, if they just survived their lives. Nowadays, everybody thinks they have to be enlightened, and if they're not, they beat themselves up and make it even harder on themselves. So we're kind of hoping to reframe this for you here and make you able to see that the process itself is the process of healing, the process of transcending those lower vibratory states in us that are always going to be there. We can't cut off our emotions or our childhood traumas or whatever life's experiences from our spiritual journey, they're always going to be there. So we're going to have to learn ways how to deal with that, and that is what higher vibrational living is all about. It's about learning ways to deal. Here is a question that's coming in. Akin, thank you for posting this. If you have love and joy for what you do, a sport, for instance, an occupation, are you in a high vibratory state? Very, very cool question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to answer that, Jeff?
Well, yeah, if you're enjoying something and it expands into your life, that's the very essence of what we're looking for. Now you can also have joy for lower vibratory patterns and contractive states. So if it's a experience or if it's an activity that brings joy to you and is expansive in your life, then yes, absolutely, that's one phenomenal way to add to the higher vibratory state, because that's adding to that expansion.
But it leads into a really good direction, and that your question, and that is, it is definitely supportive for your journey
Mm-hmm.
to align yourselves to activities, thoughts, inner sentiments that bring you love and joy.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, from a more sort of spiritual standpoint, there only really is the absence, the presence of love or the absence of love. Anytime we align ourselves or engage into activities or thoughts or emotions that promote love in us and others, we are aligning ourselves to a higher vibratory state. The only problem with that is, as Jeff just mentioned, is that things like our shadow, like our desires, our wantingness, and so forth, can sometimes feel like love. And we don't really know how to discern that yet. And so we align ourselves to things like that come from our ego aspects, that we think are love. And here is a little bit of an issue for people and not really knowing the difference. But yes, thank you for contributing. Very cool question. Marianne, Renee, Rick, do you guys have tips in regards to aligning ourselves to activities, things that we really love?
I always go and feel within.
Mm-hmm.
Is this for me? And if it feels good and it gives me joy, then I push on with it. You know what I mean? It has to be true and real to you in order for you to put it out there. And I understand the thing on desiring to be happy, to be loved. When you do get stuck in that, it's just like you can't find it. There's this like cloud that comes and you're searching for it, to where if you just allow it to come and go for the things that are going to make you feel good without the wanting. I think the wanting gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel the difference, you personally, Marianne? By the way, I forgot to introduce you, Marianne Lozoya, one of our beloved trans coaches here at transCODES. How do you feel inside of you that something is true to you, or that it's really based on true love?
It's the trust that I have when I go within my heart. It's something that just didn't happen overnight. I've been on my journey for like 50 years, okay? So it's just not something that happened, but I'm learning to trust. To me, that was the most important emotion, was to learn to trust what I felt within me and what was right for me. And it took a long time for me to get there, but I have no doubt in my heart when I go in it, because it's the energy that I feel at that time. It's taken me a long time to feel that kind of energy, that it's like, yes, this is for you. And if it's not, I usually get a little, it doesn't feel right. But I've learned to trust my inner feelings. That's the whole process that I've learned in the 50 years that I've maybe more that I've been, because I'm 74 years old, so I've been around the block a few times, and just trusting what's right for you, and it comes in really strong when you go inside your heart.
I hear you.
That's my point right here, right in the center.
Thanks for
So I always touch base right there before I do anything. Is this for me? And trust the feeling that comes. That's it.
thank you, Marianne, for sharing your wisdom.
Mhm.
Keep asking questions, guys. In between, that's fine. If you don't want to speak in the microphone, just type your question and we'll address them. Okay. Very beautiful. So this actually brings up a really cool aspect, Marianne. Thank you for bringing that up. And that is how to make choices and how do we really feel what is a healthy choice or a good choice and what is not. I brought up a quote here: all choices affect our personal energy, but not just based on their outcome, but more importantly, based on the energy and inner alignment at the moment of making that choice. This is kind of like what Marianne was addressing here, that when she's about to make a choice or decision, to feel within, is this true to me? From an energetic viewpoint, a healthy choice has a higher vibration than an unhealthy choice. So the
It's
state of our personal energy is always the sum of our choices. And this is something to think about here a little bit, but really what it comes down to is that we need to really become aware of the choices that we make. And that leads me to the 12 principles of higher vibrational living. And each and every of these principles has some of the things that we just talked about, and that um, all your questions entail build in. The first principle of high vibrational living or integrating high vibrational living is to adjust our alignment towards life supporting energies and making healthy choices. And as Marianne just mentioned, this can only be felt in the moment when you make a choice. Yes, and some comments here, and know why you're making that choice, what you get out of it. All right. In context here with athletics, I was a marathon runner for many decades, and I thought this was the coolest thing, and I thought this was bringing me love and joy until I found out that there was some other things that really played into why I was doing
Mhm.
that. There's a lot of sort of inner child stuff and almost sort of like a symbolic running away from things. And in the end, I end up with destroyed knees and some other health issues that had to be corrected through surgery, which really showed me that this is not a very healthy choice for me, even though my ego really liked the idea of running and exhausting myself. So this is a good example how a choice or a decision or something we feel like we want to do is not necessarily something that is based on a higher vibrational principle, even though it's not bad or evil or anything, but it's not um, uh, really good for us until we ask ourselves, is this really true to me? When I ask myself, is this true to me? I got to know.
Mhm.
And so I stopped excessively running. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong to run.
Well, it can
Um,
also change as you grow and as you go through your journey. Sometimes things that feel right all of a sudden don't feel right anymore, and that doesn't mean that you have ascended or anything. It may be that your energy has changed, but it's about having that open flow. You know, typically athletes, unless they're playing a game they can play a long time in life, athletes who do really strenuous sports, at some point they have to choose that differently. You know, so what it may have brought them tremendous joy and tremendous fun and all that kind of stuff at one point becomes different another. So it's a matter of just having that understanding that life is about flow, and sometimes what works for you at one point doesn't another.
And can I say something? It doesn't mean you have to stop exercising or
Right.
anything. Learn to do it differently.
Exactly.
I learned that myself also. I was like, and I was doing all kinds of heavy lifting and stuff, and I did I realized I had injured myself. I still work out, but I do it differently, and I do different exercises for my body, because as you get a little bit older, you have to change the way you do things. It doesn't mean you have to stop doing it. You find new ways to do them.
Yeah, Rick, would you like to add something to this here as a physical therapist?
Well, well, first of all, can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, I would completely agree with everything that you've said. I mean, obviously, the body can wear down if it's repeating the same motions and activity over and over again for a long period of time. So, and also certain dysfunctions and so on can be created in a sense. So, it's definitely I would say very important, if not imperative, to change over time so that you don't create problems that then would potentially prevent you from participating in different activities.
Do you have tips on how a person can sort of feel this out, if the type of exercise that they're doing or sport is good for them or not?
Well, that can be a bit challenging in a sense, but I think for the most part, I think your body will tell you. You will probably feel some symptoms of some sort if you're creating a problem. Of course, when we're young, we can endure a bit of pain and stress and then recover quickly. As we get older, we don't recover quite as quickly. So you have to really discern if what you're dealing with is just soreness due to the activity that then goes away, or if it's more of a long-term problem that you're creating. And then I would agree with what seems to be the trend so far, is go within and try to feel out why you're doing what you're doing, especially if you're creating symptoms. Because there may be, like you had mentioned, Yona, with the running, there may be an emotional reason why you're hanging on to a particular activity that may not be beneficial to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Stay with us here for a bit for the second principle, because it's related to the first one, changing our diet. Not just our diet, but really changing our lifestyle to support our body. This is something that I would also identify as one of the biggest misconceptions in sort of the spiritual scene, that the body really isn't important for our ascension process. What are the things that you would recommend to people as far as like supporting their body on a physical level, like with diet or other things?
Well, I think this can be a challenge, and I think everybody is a little bit different. And I know in the past, and I'll kind of answer one of the questions that you mentioned in the beginning, Yona, if I may. In the past, I sort of studied and would read and peruse websites and so on to try to find the perfect diet. Mm-hmm. And in the end, that was basically just what my ego agreed to. It was just basically just an opinion. And then I would try to follow that, and if I would have any transgressions, I would go into basically what you mentioned as a beat-up cycle, where I would create guilt and then frustration and anger and so on. And I think, first of all, when it comes to diet and so on, I think the emotional cycles that many, myself included, get into over it are far worse than what we eat.
Yeah.
At least for me, it was and my diet was actually really quite good. But if I reached for that piece of cheesecake, then I would beat myself up for days. Even, and it was my ego that was pushing me in that direction, and then it was my ego and my egoic patterns that would berate me for doing it. So I think there's so many different body types and so many different situations based upon the activity level that you have. But I think we all can be students of nutrition without getting into a pattern where we're beating ourselves up if we're not perfect.
Thank you so much for pointing that out.
Yeah.
That the emotional beat up is by far worse energetically than what we eat or what we've done. Here, the question that we had in the beginning that you were referring to, Rick, about veganism or vegetarianism. What is your take on that?
Um, well, myself, I don't know really if I fall into a classification. And so I just myself, I strive to eat organic foods. I don't eat a lot of meat, maybe once a month, twice a month. Occasionally eggs, a little bit of dairy here and there, but I mainly go by what helps me feel energetic, and what makes me feel healthy. And then I again, like we've all been saying so far, I sort of look within when I make choices. And for example, in the past, I used to have a problem with gluten, and I would eat bread and things of that sort, and I would actually physically have pain. Well, now I'm beyond that, and I can pretty much eat whatever I want. But when I eat bread, I find that I get tired, and I don't really want to be tired, so I don't really eat it. So another person may not react that way. So I think we kind of have to look at our own reactions and know our emotional patterns around food so that we can eat in a way to provide our body with what it needs while not being so rigid that we don't enjoy a bit of cheesecake here and there.
So the mental patterns around food as well. Yes, I think that was actually a really nice answer to the question earlier. How do you recommend tuning into yourself, as far as like what is best for you nutritionally, rather than being swept away by the feelings of guilt? This is a really nice answer, Rick. Thank you so much. Um, from our point of view here, if somebody is really dedicated to wanting to be vegetarian or vegan, ways to help to tune yourself in is to really look at food as functional and energetic, and the problem with animal products, especially the ones that result or that are produced in the way that they're industrially produced nowadays, that come from slaughter, have a lot of fear, a lot of abuse, a lot of degradation energies in them. And
Mm-hmm.
so, for those of you who are struggling with staying away from meat, if that's what you decide to do, then always try to see the what it is that you attracted to, what that energy entails. Okay, if there's even a difference between organic meat and meat that is being produced sort of in mass production. A cow that has been loved all life and has been cared for by a person, where there's a high vibration in the entire sort of raising and a keeping process, has a different energy. The meat of that kind of cow has a different energy than the cow that was never out in the open, that was heavily mistreated and so forth. Without going deeper into this, we really don't recommend any particular diets, like Rick said, or any particular category. However, and this is something we see over and over and over again, as people's energetic frequencies raise, they begin to stay away from meat. They begin to stay away from refined sugars, from gluten, and so forth, because they can feel how it makes them feel low. And this is sort of I think the best tip here that Rick gave us is to feel within and choose what makes you feel healthy, but without depriving yourself.
Yes.
If you have this affinity to chocolate or cheesecake or whatever, go for it. Go for the best chocolate out there, the best cheesecake you can find, and enjoy it. Enjoy it with love, every bite of it, consciously.
Yeah, don't bash yourself for doing it, and set up a space for it.
Choose it.
Yes.
Choose to enjoy it, and so it does not drift off into the category of beat up. You allowed yourself to have that piece of chocolate or that cheesecake, and you're congruent with your decision, and that is what really makes a difference from an energetic point of view. Next, a big one here, and probably part of the reason why the process often takes longer than we think it should, which of course is coming from our ego. learning to read and work with our inner energies. We've got to know ourselves. We've got to know our energies. We don't have to be energy readers. We don't have to be clairvoyants or whatever. This is not what this is about. Really turning within and feel out, like the things that Marianne and Rick mentioned here. They all are based on them having learned to read and work their energies, to feel when something feels good, to feel when something doesn't feel good, and how the body, which is a wonderful tuning fork for energetic resonances, how our body signals that to us. Principle number 4, becoming aware of our daily exposure to life-draining energies. This was also part of many of the questions that we received. Here at the stage, it's best to just become aware of that, to really sort of do a little bit of a balance sheet. You know, we may have a wonderful home, we may do a lot of nature walks, do great exercises, have a wonderful relationship, but then the job we're working is absolutely awful and draining us. And that's something when we look at the balance here, you know, if we spend 8 to 10 hours working in a life draining or energy draining environment and only get to spend, you know, a few hours free time where we can actually engage in high vibrational activities, well, then the balance is a bit off. So we need to learn how to balance that. But before we can actually make changes, we really need to become aware of what the things are that we expose ourselves or our energy to. And here, something that most of you are intuitively aware of this. Reading material that encourages, that empowers love, joy, peace, and so forth, which we would call high vibrational material, can counteract some of that, can pull your energy back up, looking at beautiful pictures, paintings, listening to harmonious music, spending time with friends, with good food and so forth. Those are all activities that are life supporting. All right, so we can learn how to balance these things out. And even if we feel like we're not there yet, going into taking the time for meditation, for engaging in real beautiful activities, can help us to counterbalance some of that.
Well, that's the trick. What you're doing is you're beginning to expose yourself to it. So, and that's one of the big tricks with abundance, is you begin to expose yourself to the very thing that you want in your life. So if you want to have love, if you want to have beauty, if you want to have joy, if you want to have all those aspects of abundance, including money and all those things, is you begin to expose yourself to those things. You find things that represent that in your life. Like if I know one of the best things I can do sometimes is I go play with with my dog. By playing with my dog, I expose myself to a goofy, happy energy because he's happy. He wants to run. He wants to play. He wants to do tug of war. All those kind of things. That's one way. I know if I'm down or if something's happening, I can put on classical music and that'll shift my energy. I'll read books like Yona just talked about that will add to my experience. Meditation adds to that experience. You're beginning to expose yourself and attempting to align to those very energies that we're talking about that are expansive. Those are all the things you begin to do. And yes, sometimes it can be really challenging with, one of the questions we had of 15 years of suffering and going through this. Well, there can be many things that are involved in that. Sometimes it's you're exposing yourself to the wrong things. Other times it's patterns within us that haven't quite let go of yet.
Sometimes it's just people around us that keep pulling us down.
And sometimes we simply have to stay dedicated and keep working at it and look at the little things and chip away. Because a lot of times it's little things that we chip away that all of a sudden change everything. If we have a victim program that is running us and we aren't aware of it, regardless of how much work we do, that victim program will keep yanking us back down over and over and over again. If we go into specialness, we get into we're the ones that are going to be the number one, or we're going to find that one way or that one secret that's going to get us
perfectionism,
enlightened or whatever. Well, it's not the game.
or lack program.
Yes, all those kind of
being
things.
convinced that all the things that we want we don't have.
Which would all be life draining. Yes.
Yeah. So the bottom line of this principle is to identify the things that are actually counterproductive, that work against our alignment to higher vibratory goals.
Slowly working to remove those as you can.
Number 5, learning how to regularly clear and self-heal our energy body. This is also one of the things that takes a little time. For some reason, it's not. It's explainable. We're conditioned that way, but it's natural for us to shower every day, to brush our teeth and so forth, to do some basic grooming of our body to maintain our physical body. But this hasn't really approached most of our overall awareness of our of the totality of our energy body. So a lot of people really miss out on paying attention to clearing and self-healing processes that are needed to just reinstate. Like, say we come home from a job that is energy draining at night, and then we need to accept that we need some time.
Yeah.
We need to allocate some time, attention, energy, whatnot, to go into self-healing, to go into self-love, and support our energy body to get rid of those energies. There's a lot of techniques that can be learned. This is basically what transCODES does, is teaching people how to do these things on a practical level. Number 6, assessing our energetic state. And of course, becoming a bit more honest about our ego attachments through self-reflection. That's something that needs to be learned. There are some people who are naturally doing this. There's recovery programs like this 12-step program, for instance, is really good at learning this, and we've created an entire e-course around this, the Sacred Self-Healing course, to help people to assess where they're at. But in a very simplified version and applicable to our practical lives, if we feel off energetically, or if we feel emotional, if we feel angry, if we feel sad, no matter what the emotion is, assessing our energetic state means becoming aware that this is where we're at right now. If I'm in a state of anger, or a state of fear, or a state of guilt, like, for instance, the beating myself up over the cheesecake that I just ate, okay? I need to understand that this is where I'm at right now. I can't be striving for peace and love and enlightenment if I'm in a state of guilt or anger or fear. So assessing where I'm at is really the first step of becoming able to change.
Yeah.
And if the change is difficult for me, if I keep finding myself repetitively in the same lower state, well, then I have to look at, what do I get out of it? What's my ego attachment to the state? What do I get out of victimhood? What do I get out of anger? What do I get out of not facing my emotions altogether?
Mm-hmm.
This is a process that most people need guidance for that, because it requires a bone-crushing honesty with ourselves, and that is often sort of overshadowed by a lot of sort of mental beliefs and things. As Jeff mentioned earlier, a multitude of factors, even sort of karmic propensities and so forth, can play into this. But without assessing where we're at and looking at why we keep going there and what we get out of it deep down, one of our teachers used to say, the juice that we get out of it, without that, it will be very difficult for us to implement changes. And this leads to the 7th principle, which is taking an honest inventory of our patterns and programs. We're all programmed, folks. We're programmed on a human collective level. We're programmed on a cultural level, ethnic level, if you will. We're programmed on a sort of a social level, like the country that we live in and so forth. And we're programmed on a family level, and even on a relationship level. And so there's a lot of inner programs and behavioral patterns that play a role in whether or not we're able to maintain higher vibrational states. All right, we have to be willing to look at those. I'm seeing some heads nodding here. Renine, do you want to add something to that?
Well, I think this kind of goes along with, what you were just talking about in 6, taking an inventory and just bridging the two, looking at where you're at and then being able to see a pattern. I think that there's a bridge there of acceptance that it's really important to look at and have a lot of compassion for yourself. Hold on just one second.
Yeah, I agree.
The compassion, just knowing that this is where we're at, because I think when we get to the place where we start taking inventory, we become a little bit more self-judgmental, and then you start wanting to tilt more towards the ascension, and actually the descension part is probably the part of this that's going to make us feel a lot better if we break down all the stuff and we're not trying to shoot towards a direction and pulling that back in and accepting. And the biggest part of accepting is realizing that when you accept something about yourself, it doesn't mean you actually like it, but getting to a place of acceptance, there's some peace there to where you can ask yourself better questions. You can find ways to bridge. How can I feel a little bit better? Say you're at the bottom of that chart, like you were showing us, in the shame and guilt. When you're feeling that, you want to go all the way to the top. If your patterns and programs and things in your inventory have taken you down there, you want to go all the way to the top. When actually, the feasible thing to do is just accept where you're at. That's your platform. You have to live right where you're at. You have to live with how you're feeling. You've got to live with these programs. You can't you can't look at that and jump. You can't just make that leap. You're going to have to take everything with you. So acceptance and deep compassion, to just make those little steps, and then you start acknowledging. Once you make that acceptance, you can ask yourself a good question. You can say, how can I be in my heart now when I'm in a situation like this, or how is this pattern keeping me from my heart? And I find that the questions just get better. Mm-hmm. If I'm in the worst pattern that I have, and I'm in a lot of pain, I'm in shame, finding a good question to just take a couple of steps up is the hardest thing to do. Yes. Because you're just like, how can I feel good right now? That's your only question, when it might just be, how can I feel a little better? Mm-hmm. Or how can I see this differently? That's actually my favorite. How can I see this situation differently? And that's where you just kind of, without feeling like you have to open your heart, it just opens for you. How can I see this differently?
Wonderful. Thank you, Renine, for sharing this with us. Wonderful. Great tip.
Yeah.
Moving on here to step 8, identifying triggers and attachments that bind us to lower vibrational energies. This, of course, goes in line with that. So once we kind of know what the stuff is, that we carry with us, as you said, well, then we kind of have to look at, and this seems a bit mental, but it's really important to investigate that a little bit with ourselves, to identify the triggers, the things that can zoom us into a state of like complete annihilation or complete fear, and then learning to stay away from them. And if we don't, asking ourselves what our attachment is. Yeah. What is that? Why do we keep watching news if it makes us feel completely scared of the violence and the evilness that is out there? just as an example. Or what are other triggers that most common triggers that you guys can all see?
There's a bunch of them. What energy? Yeah, you could look at any type of emotional response you have, any type of pattern you find yourself in, any type of loop you find yourself in. They're numerous. You can get into anger. You can keep getting angry to try to stay in control. You can be fearful to stay in control. There's all kinds of things that pop in.
Here's
Addictions
one.
also.
Talking to your mother.
Uh-huh.
This probably works for 90% of the people. Feeling really bad after having talked to your own mom or dad. Not that it's the mom or dad that are the reason, but there are so many triggers involved with or talking about certain subjects with your partner or certain things your kids do. Those are things that can trigger even the most spiritually evolved person into a lower vibratory state. All right. And here it's important to really investigate what these triggers are and what binds us to them, which means why do we just keep repeating it? It has to do with the patterns of the seventh principle. What is the pattern behind that? And are there things that we can do differently, like bringing added to the equation? Really, really big, an important question. Then, of course, comes the part where we can begin to implement changes. And this principle here, number 9, changing our energetic behaviors and interactions. Well, of course, we can practice that with those interactions that we have with others on a regular basis, like our family, our kids, our spouses, the family dynamics, siblings, and so forth. And here, people usually make a huge shift once they start really seeing those patterns and beginning to change energetic behaviors. Um, I just want to give everyone a heads up who is now sort of inspired to look at some of those behavioral things and wanting to break free or wanting to disrupt some of those patterns. You will not get a positive response if you are, like, say, with your kids or with your spouse or your parents or whatever. If there are patterns that are decades old, where you guys have the same sort of mechanism going between you, and you start disrupting that, or just sort of not playing the game anymore.
Yes.
There is usually a little bit of a resistance there from other people. So this takes a little bit of patience to see through that and to stand your ground, you know?
But you might feel a really good release inside yourself. That's the thing. So as you work through these, if you face a fear and choose differently, if you work to agree not to go into anger, like whatever your trigger is, whatever the emotion is, by doing that, you chip away at that some of those emotionality and ego programs, and all of a sudden you find a new part of yourself. Because that's what the introspective lifestyle does. Is you go, oh, okay, I'm going into guilt again. Oh, I'm going into this. I'm not going to go there this time. You choose differently, and you may not have the right choice. The choice might just be like says. You might create a lot of frustration because you just back out. But by doing that, you may notice within yourself too, your energy shifts up,
Yeah.
Yes.
or you feel more real, or you feel like, oh man, I feel so much better for not letting my boundary get crossed, or not doing something that I didn't want to do. That can really bolster your journey quite often.
Marianne, did you want to comment on that?
No, it's true. It's especially with the family members. That's the hardest because you're in a tribe and you have to do things their way. Otherwise you rock the boat. I had to go through that all my life until I just, like Jeff said, I stood my ground and I started to back up and not go into the emotional aspect of it. I sort of like stood back and watched them do their dance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like funny to me inside. Of course, I didn't laugh outside. I probably got slapped. But the whole thing is just to stand your ground, and you realize later that it's all a control thing.
Mm-hmm.
They want to control the way you think, the way you shouldn't be doing things. And when it's right what Jeff said, once you realize that that is a trigger and you don't give into it, everything shifts.
It's
They
also,
won't bother you anymore,
yeah.
because they think crazy. And you go, yes, I am, and I'm going to stay here.
And also, I want to throw in the stuff that Renee was referring to. Also, kind of admitting and acknowledging our own part in it.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
the control aspect that you brought up. This is like so common. And I don't know about you folks, but we have control patterns in us as well. Be it
Of
just
course.
to protect ourselves, and
Yes.
some of these coping mechanisms, as we call them, they can be very counterproductive to our energetic behavior.
Yeah, and you get bored of them after a while. If you keep going down the path and you really keep aligning, to higher vibrational meditation and heart connection work, after a while you're just like, am I really going there again? Okay. And
Yeah.
eventually you just kind of get like, and you could even have in it. Bored is not the right word. Probably what happens is your compassion's there, but you're just like, okay, what do you need this for? What is, and you're actually talking to your ego at that point. You're not even talking to the truth of you anymore. It's your ego, which is part of you, but it's the part that you don't want running you anymore. You just kind of go, what do you need this for now?
Yeah.
I don't really see the point anymore. And you have this. It's a letting go slowly over time, and sometimes there's big shifts too. Sometimes, like Marianne said, you just boom one time. It's all it takes, and all of a sudden, this massive release of energy is there, and you have so much more energy to put into your journey. Other times, these patterns that we've had for a lifetime, or decades, or many years, they take a while to kind of break down and kind of fall apart.
I like
That's
what.
true, especially in the workplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in the workplace and you are realizing, your behaviors and they're not in alignment with how you want to live your life. There's a lot you have to dig yourself out of there because you have created alliances. There's office politics going on, and when you change that, the first thing that's going to happen is people are going to feel betrayed. They're going to, you know, you've talked badly about so and so also, and haven't liked the way the company ran this or that, and all of a sudden you're changing your tune, and people are not going to react favorably to that.
I like
It's difficult.
what you said earlier, Renee. It really comes down, especially this principle here of changing our energetic behaviors and interaction. It comes down to acceptance and compassion. Accepting
Yes.
that there are limitations, that I have limitations, that other people have limitations, and having compassion for that. See, it doesn't do us any good, our journey here, to go into superiority, and
No.
just see sort of the patterns that other people are stuck in and sort of put ourselves above them and go internally into our pride and into our ego stuff, because they can't see this yet. And this is extremely counterproductive and probably one of the pitfalls, one of the most common pitfalls on this journey of ascension, to look at others and say, "Oh, look at them, how they're stuck in their ego and they can't see it." Oh well, be
Right.
assured there are things that you're not aware of, and shifting your attitude here towards compassion and acceptance also helps you to become less judgmental about yourself in the process. So
Yes.
non
Absolutely.
is a big one
Yep.
to implement this principle. Principle 10, learning energetic defense techniques. This is for those of us who are growing in energetic sensitivity, and especially, those of us who have already sort of shifted our work or our purpose towards empathetic living, towards serving others, and so forth. This cannot be left out. All right. I'm not recommending to go into like extreme sort of fancy techniques here, but learning energetic defense techniques, or at least educating ourselves in those, can make a tremendous difference. There's a lot of things that we can learn to consolidate our energy. And again, the all the questions that were regarding absorbing other people's energies or taking on things from our partners or our loved ones play into this. It is not only that there's like people out there like what they're called on the internet, like emotional or energetic vampires. Most people are not aware of what they're doing. 99% of people are not aware of this. So learning some of the dynamics and some of the defense techniques can help us to run into those unconscious absorption mechanisms. But again, it's really important also to reflect on what we put out there. Mm-hmm. And so if we project, I'm a spiritual healer, or I know all the answers, or I can help you.
That's a good one. That always gets you.
Well, yeah, you're going to feel pretty attacked at the end of the day.
Yeah.
a lot of the dynamics that we pull in, the attractors that we pull in, and I'm choosing those words on purpose, we actually pulling them in. So a big part of learning energetic defense techniques is becoming aware of what we project. And that, again, requires those previous principles, inventory, being aware of our ego attachments, and honest self-reflection. Without that, guys, it's not possible to get where you want to be, to live a life on sort of those high vibrational rules or principles of ethics and integrity and love. So that's the bottom line here of learning about defense techniques. Principle 11, becoming true to ourselves on all levels. Well, this is, if we've gone through all these other stages, then that's actually when we become real. And becoming real is probably our most powerful defense. Mm-hmm. Everything that we transcended, that we've worked through, that we've admitted to ourselves, that we accepted about ourselves, that we didn't need to judge anymore, that we learned to feel compassion for, becomes our shield.
Yes.
Here's a question: can we look upon projection as a gift? Yes, this is a good question. Mm-hmm. And especially those of you who've already engaged in some form of shadow work, vision quests, and so forth. See, the thing with projection is that some of us have that ability to project more than others. It's a power to a degree. But if we are still stuck in our ego, chances are that we use this for, not so integrous intentions. And so for most people, since most people are not aware of these things, their natural ability to project is often misused and ends up, in some form of power control game. A good example, for instance, is a very good salesperson. Salespersons are extremely talented projectors. Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's used, of course, for the wrong reason or with the wrong intention, then it can do a lot of harm to people. And yes. So how we use this, our ability to project our energy depends on our alignment. And if our alignment is still in the realms of ego or even fear, then it becomes a shadow trade. Yeah. And so shadow work really is the part where we learn to transcend that and rediscover the flip side of the negative aspect of our projection. There's an interview that I had with one of a dear friend of mine, Ida Lawrence, where we talked about sort of the journey and how far we've come. And there, it's on the YouTube channel, on the transCODES YouTube channel, and also in the blog. I talk about how, like for instance, in my case, a real sort of traumatic childhood has actually led to my energetic capabilities to develop. And so, even though I misused them for the most part in my younger years, through this my spiritual journey, I could discover the positive aspects, the gift that was in that. And this really sort of brings the journey down to the essence of what it is to really see it all in the larger context, to see how maybe like in my case, I had to be a good energy reader because the way I grew up was not safe from my perspective as a child, and so I sort of needed that as a protection mechanism, and also to kind of control the environment a little bit so that I could feel safer. Well, I've misused this, in my early years, and, with sexual projection, all these kind of things that we do to feel more powerful, to feel safer, until I realized that it's actually a gift and that it can be used in a different way. So the reframing of some of the things, some of the shadow traits that we discover about ourselves into something positive is a really big result of all this work. This is where when we become true to ourselves, we have no problems talking about these things, admitting these things to us, and seeing the flip side of the coin. Seeing it from a different perspective. That's what becoming true to ourselves on all levels means. Thanks for the question, Jara.
Good question.
And so the last principle then, and here's your question, Ash. Learning how to consciously manifest health, wealth, and love. And this is the 12th principle because it requires us to understand all the things that are actually holding us from doing that. So our journey really is, like Jeff always says, it's like chipping things away. It's like chipping all the stuff away, the mental, the emotional, even sometimes our spiritual beliefs, the patterns that we have, the triggers, the ego attachments, and so forth, so that we can become real and consciously know what we are aligned to and how to do that. So the manifestation of love, abundance, health, and wealth is all the same energetic level, really. It's a high vibrational attractive field. It is the result of us seeing things the way they truly are. Ourselves, the world around us, and reframing this bit by bit. And if we run into repetitive difficulties doing that, be it health-wise, be it financially, be it in our relationship life, then we have to go a step deeper. We have to look at the pattern.
Yeah.
Why do I keep attracting this stuff into my life? Now, you may say, well, but what about, if I am the victim of, heavy abuse or something? Of course, this is unfortunate. But from an energetic standpoint, there is an attractor field in us that makes these things possible.
Yeah.
And turning this around, there are ways that when we consciously work with our energy to really prevent things, accidents, trauma, abuse, and so forth, to prevent those from happening. This doesn't mean that it's our fault. There are often other things in play, like karmic propensities, karmic debt, and so forth. Why we keep repeating the same unfortunate events back into our lives. But even that is part of this journey. And so if we want to ascend, just to stick with the terminology here, we have to begin to see ourselves in the totality of our energy. It's not just the thoughts, the mental concepts we have. Mental concepts will not get us to enlightenment.
Yeah, the concepts themselves, when you're looking at health and wealth and love, if you're searching for them, you feel like you don't have them. So coming from that and, reframing, definition and, saying this being one who, yes, I've felt very unhealthy and very unwealthy and unloved before. And, And in such states, it puts you in a state of self-preservation, and when you're trying to preserve self and go somewhere, you can't be in the state of love. You can't be in the state of health or wealth. You're depleted just by your thought of not being there.
The journey to enlightenment, ascension, or higher vibrational living is like physical exercise. It needs to be trained. We need to train those higher vibratory states. We need to adjust our physical, we need to adjust our behavioral, we need to adjust our mental and our emotional things that are in the way. This needs to be practiced. This does not happen overnight. And even if we have moments of enlightenment, that doesn't mean that we can hold those states and live in these states. All right. So we need to practice that. And this is where we need to cut ourselves some slack, give ourselves that time and space to heal, to make corrections, and to adjust as we go. Yes, Renine, thank you for pointing this out. So here, before we go to the life question part, and I know we're running over time, so if you have to go, don't feel bad. We're recording this for you, and you'll get the parts. If you want to ask a question, but you have to go, just type your question to us, and we'll answer it for you to listen to later. And those of you who want to stay, just stay with us here. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. The general integration tips. Drink more water and focus on modalities and activities that can support your body and to energetically detox. This, of course, really also refers to foods. All right. So support your body in that. And drinking water is so essential. All right. And it's free. So just go for it. All right. You don't need to have fancy supplements or dietary rules. All right. Feel it out and support your body, whatever helps with detoxing and clearing your body. Learn how to utilize your innate clearing abilities and practice energetic consolidation through centering in your heart. We haven't really emphasized this a lot here during this webinar. We have other places where we talk about how to do that, especially in our sacred self-healing community. But centering in our heart is the essential gateway to higher vibratory states. Remove negative energies as you go. So this is the other part. So on the one hand, we align ourselves to higher vibratory states. On the other hand, we need to remove or eliminate our exposure to negative or lower vibrational energies. And do this as you go. All right, because this is an expansive process. So you're going to see things, even after years and years or intensive work, you're going to begin to see things in a different light, and you'll discover sort of low vibratory properties of things, like we talked about with the marathon running or other things, over time. Align your energy to higher vibratory levels for support. What I mean with this is music, activities, dancing, even some movies. Not a lot, maybe just sort of, I don't know, 1% of all the movies out there are worth watching from an energetic point of view. Socializing, activities that involve love, that express love every moment of your life. Those are higher vibratory energies. Discern if a food, emotion, activity, and so forth, if life sustaining or draining. Again, that is probably the most important tool on our journey here, our ability to discern. And the only way to discern if something is energy sustaining or draining is through our heart, through the guidance in our heart. We all have different bodies, we have different circumstances, different karma, different shadow aspects, and so forth. So there is no such thing as one rule for everybody. We need to learn how to discern this ourselves, because we are the only authority in being ourselves.
Amen.
So I have a long question here that I need to read. How to proceed at times when we when we follow our heart, send our calling, let's say leading, that is to something that's only true to ourselves. Okay, I can't understand the question. Those who are looking from the distance.
Oh,
Jaro, do you have a microphone? Would
wait,
you like to ask that
I
question directly? Do you have a functioning microphone? No, okay. Okay, I think this is in regards to other people. Could you just rephrase your question so that I can read it out loud? Thank you.
Are you asking that? What do you do when if you choose to follow your heart and other people are going to question it or challenge you?
Is that how you meant this? Like how do you get through the resistance that's coming from the outside?
Okay.
Yes, okay. So, yeah, we talked a little bit about that, that most likely you're going to get resistance when you start making changes, when you start
Especially with family
seeing.
members and close friends, you're going to have some pretty intense reactions, and you'll also find out with your friends. Some of them are really, really cool about, it, some of them won't be. But with family members, a lot of times they're going to challenge you and push and say, "Why are you doing this?" and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of times it comes down to making a decision to stand your ground and being truthful and just saying, "Hey, this is the way I'm going to be now."
Yes, this is a very common occurrence amongst energetically sensitive people and people who are like sort of actively working on ascension, if I may call this a way, that we get negative responses and that people think like, what planet are you on, or what kind of cult are you in, or whatever, because they simply don't resonate on that level of how we are seeing things. All
Right.
right. This doesn't mean that they don't get it or that they're never going to get there. It just means that they have a different timeline, and so it comes again down to these basic principles of compassion and acceptance. That what we are choosing for ourselves may not necessarily be acceptable for others, but this doesn't mean that they're wrong. Okay, just because we prefer this doesn't mean that we are against somebody else. This is a big thing that we've worked on the last couple of weeks here at transCODES with the transmissions. It's like, just because I'm choosing myself doesn't mean that I'm choosing against you. Very big issue. So um, we may lose a few friends, that may not agree with how we see things or how we do things, and this may feel a little alone at times, because it feels like a constant bombardment from the outside. But at the same time, we can also accepting, that other people need to be true to themselves as well. So in on our journey of becoming real to ourselves and really becoming congruent with our true self, we also need to accept the true self in others. And so sometimes it just means to let go. Sometimes we just have to let go, but that means we don't have to condemn anybody or judge anybody.
Well, and then you begin to honor other ones, because some people will stick with you. They'll understand and respect you, and they'll even apologize sometimes for how they've acted or understand, or they want to know why it is you're changing. So the aloneness that you feel sometimes with that is a challenge. But what you begin to find are people that want that just as much as you do. They want, it may not exactly the same way you do, but you'll begin to find friends, and it'll be a little bit less usually, um, that, or people in your life, family members even, that want expansion. They want that connection. They want truth. Now, it may not be quite the truth you are, because every level of truth is a bit different, but you'll begin to have those conversations and see those people who really want a real experience. And that's where it can become fun.
I mean, it is a time now where there's more and more people coming out of the woodwork, be it through a lifelong journey or just sort of suddenly waking up. There are so many people out there who think along those lines, who can, communicate their feelings and their views in this way. So we have to find these people by aligning ourselves to, and we have to find communities like here, what we're trying to build with transcodes, where we can really speak freely. There is almost like an energetic incompatibility sometimes. So all the things that we talked about here, they're probably Chinese for the majority of the people on this planet. I'm not Chinese. I don't mean to be degrading. Some kind of foreign language.
They don't make sense.
They don't make any sense. And this has to do with the energetic alignment. So you have to accept that as you work on these things and align yourselves to a higher vibrational living, that you won't find a lot of supporters in your initial sort of karmic family karmic setup. Very often, this is actually a big part of that journey to let that go. But we don't have to condemn anybody either. We can learn ways to deal with them. We can learn ways to stand our ground, to maintain our boundaries without having to like burn all bridges or without having to go into judgment. That will pull us back down. See, one of the biggest things on practical things of integrating the principles of high vibrational living is that you learn how to deal with things as you go. All right. And we don't need to protect ourselves from naysayers. All right. Really, all they're expressing with their pessimism is their lower vibratory alignment. So it comes down to our trust, as Marianne called it in the beginning, and the faith that we have in our true self and our inner alignment that makes us strong. In combination, of course, with all the things that we've already worked through. So don't be afraid of being alone here on this journey, guys. There's tons of people out there. We just won't find them in those places that we grew up in or that we normally go to. So we have to shift the places.
And if you fluctuate back and forth between going into truth, not going, you're going to alienate yourself from both. So if you're wobbling a bit or not quite sure, what happens is you're going to alienate people who really want truth because they're going to sense it. And then the people who, really want you to stay in the ego patterns or whatever it is that you're dealing with, they'll get kind of confused as well. So as you agree to align to truth, what happens is, and you agree to that aspect, you're going to kind of get rid of the riffraff and you're going to really find the solid people.
And you'd be surprised, there may be people that come to you after years and show a new level of consciousness, a new level of awareness. And you will also find that there may be people in your environment who actually appreciate your alignment to truth and who really want this from you, the honest reflection. So there's many different ways of dealing with this. So don't be discouraged just because some of the people that you grew up with or that you love, sort of turn away from you a little bit because it makes them feel insecure. This is really what the main reason behind that is. It makes them feel insecure because they don't understand some of the things that you go through.
And sometimes too, the people that do stick with you, there's a certain level they won't go to just because that either doesn't, again, like Yona said, they don't comprehend it or whatever, but they're still friends for you. So
it's not comprehension, not like mentally.
They just don't want to. Yeah.
It's just that the energetic frequency is not that there's no match, so that they can't really feel what you're saying. They may hear the words and understand the words, but they can't feel it.
But they're still friends. They're still there for you. Mm-hmm. They want to be there for you. So it's just kind of learning that curve in that game.
Thanks for asking.
Great question. And a lot of people have that question.
Yes. Is there anybody who would like to speak in the microphone and ask a question, a live question right now? I know it takes a lot of guts to do this. As many shows and webinars I put on here every week, once in a while I'm a participant in webinars myself, and boy, I go through sweating hands and not daring to say anything for like half an hour till I finally just sort of scrape it all together and say it out loud. So I know what that feels like. But that's okay. Since we've covered a lot of material here, and I'm sure you guys are starting to get tired and tired of our voices too. If you don't have any questions, please don't think it's over. You can ask questions anytime. Email us. I will put a link up there with the webinar recording that you'll receive where you can send us questions regarding the things that we talked about. A lot of the things that we talked about here is what we do at transCODES every day, 24/7, 365, in ongoing remote sessions and webinars with our Sacred Self Healing course, with the Heart Warrior boot camp, and so forth. So there's many different ways to actually do this and work with us if this is of your interest. But you can do this on your own as well, or with other people, other teachers, guides, energy coaches, and so forth. This is up to you. Here at this point, I would just like to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here, for staying here, for contributing, for asking these wonderful questions. Your questions are what made this presentation, okay? So this is the process here. So we get all these questions in, and then we create sort of the talk according to them and weave them in. And feel invited here to come to our next free Healing Circle webinar, which will be in September, Saturday the 10th. Oh, actually, this is not a free one. Sorry, this is a typo. This is actually a workshop, a Healing Circle workshop. So my apologies, this is not for free. But there are quite a few. Thank you guys for your lovely comments and the gratitude you're sending here to us. Okay, so there is a workshop coming up. This is a remote energy session with following a webinar like this one here, talking about our sensations and so forth, which is not free. I'm very sorry for the typo, but there are a lot of recordings of past free webinars on our YouTube channel, also on the transCODES blog, and there is also lots and lots of material there to read up on some of these subjects that we covered here. So thank you so much, everybody.
Yes.
I'm actually looking forward to this recording. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for your gratitude, and hope to see you at the next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye.